I took a funeral recently, and there was this reading as part of the service, which is pretty regular in a funeral service, but it's this line that was in this reading that grabbed my attention, and it crops up a few times throughout the Psalms. And the line goes something like this, that, we are dust and we are returning to dust, and our time on this earth is fleeting. In fact, say the Bible writers, and this is the line that caught me, it's like we're the grass that is lush and green in the morning, but then the sun scorches it and the wind blows over it, and by the end of the day it's gone and its place knows it no more. And as I listened to that being read out, I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. Grass isn't like that. I have to mow my grass. I can't get rid of my grass. I'd love it if the wind blew it away, but no, it's there all the time, and it's growing all the time, and it's getting greener and longer the whole time, and I've got to manage it somehow. Why did the Bible writers write that grass gets scorched by the sun and blown by the wind, and then its place is gone and it remembers it no more? Well, the truth is that is the geography, and that is what it's like where that Bible writer in particular lived. In the hot Middle Eastern day, when overnight the brief respite from the sun and maybe the dew and the wetness of the dew means that the grass can dare pop its head through the surface, well, over the blazing heat of the next day, and there's no water or irrigation, then that plant, that lily, that grass, it's gone. The wind blows it and it has no roots because the ground is hard and arid and dry, and so when the wind blows and the sun has scorched it and burned it, poof, it's gone. And it got me thinking, what other parts of the Bible, what other stories, what other metaphors, what other ways has the geography of the Bible writers formed them and their understanding of God? The Psalms is an easy place to go to. Maybe it's the lilies of the field, maybe it's the grass that the psalmist talks about, maybe it's the stars that are without number because you can see them when you live in a desert place that doesn't have electric light yet. Maybe it's the desert and the sheer number of grains of sand. Maybe it makes sense to talk about the deer that pants for the water because you live in a place where you see deer, and you live in a place where those deer don't have access to water, and they're hot and they're burned by the sun also. And so when a deer finds a stream, man alive is it glad to see it. And so it makes sense, if you're the Bible writer, to say that in the same way that deer wants water, that's how I want your presence and your spirit, God. Jesus uses imagery in his stories about seed and about farmers and about fish because he's surrounded by the sea and the lake and by fishermen. He's surrounded by farmers and fields, and even if you're not a farmer, you know seed because you have to plant it and grow it and nurture it because that's the culture and the way in which you live. You have to grow your own crops. The geography, the understanding, the experience of everything that was around them was what informed their stories, their way of understanding themselves, their world and their God. And so that got me thinking, well, if that was the case for them, is that also the case for me? And of course it is. If I think about my story, well, I grew up on a council estate. What does that do? How did that form me? That forms me in how I understand people some ways, maybe. Maybe it forms how I respond to poverty and injustice. Maybe it forms levels of trust that I have in people or don't have. Maybe it forms the way in which I vote or engage with local government. Maybe you grew up somewhere that was peaceful and by the sea, or you could easily access mountains, and you could be struck by the awe and wonder and the beauty and the complexity of creation all around you. Or maybe, like me, you grew up in Milton Keynes, and the thing that is good about Milton Keynes is its form and its function, and you can drive across anywhere else in the city really quickly, and things are built, and then when they're not needed anymore, just take that building down and put another one up. And there isn't this history in these old nooks and crannies and alleyways, but there is form and function and speed and utilitarian thought into how everything might be used. Maybe that's formed me in some way. Maybe I'm formed by the Western geography, the geopolitical geography around me, where I know safety and protection and I know peace. I haven't experienced war. Maybe that's formed me in a way that would be different to people who don't know peace and don't know security, who haven't experienced food security in their lives. Maybe growing up just down the road from a church, and if I didn't want to go to that church, I could go to a different church that was also just down the road, and I could also access that really easily. Well, maybe that forms me into somebody different than I might have been if I'd have had one church and one community of people within easy reach or access that I had to be embedded with and had to do life with, whether I liked the style of their fellowship or not. Maybe some of us might have grown up in a country where the mortality rates were way higher, and so there's a sense of urgency that shapes us and forms us. We don't even notice it, but you don't know when life might finish, and so you have to work at everything urgently. And at the extreme other end of the importance of the scale, well, my neighbour's been doing renovations for 5 years now. Pretty much every day there are loud renovation works and power tools going on. It stopped over lockdown. And I suddenly realised I wasn't stressed, because normally this noise from 8:30 exactly in the morning until later in the day, that's been stressing me, and I hadn't noticed until it stopped. We're formed all the time by the things around us, the grass or lack of it, the noise or lack of it, the people or lack of them, the safety or lack of it, the prosperity or lack of it. Everything around us, our geography, our place, forms us. And when I begin to understand how my place has formed me, I can begin to become aware of where my place might have been lacking. For instance, I've got a mate who grew up right slap bang in the centre of London. Couldn't be more London if he tried. And what he knew was missing in his life was nature, was outside, was space, was quiet, was stillness, because you can't get any of those things where he grew up. You're surrounded by tower blocks and people and noise and cars and traffic and fumes. And so how does he get his soul to be fed? How does he encounter Christ? How does he fill himself up when he's depleted? Well, he goes out to the countryside with a pair of binoculars and he sits very, very still in a little wooden hut or by the side of a lake or hidden amongst some reeds, and he watches birds. Because he knew that the place where he'd grown up, much though it had gifted him, there was a lack in his soul, in his spirit, in his experience, and he needed to be purposeful about replacing that. So here's our challenge for this conversation. Where did you grow up? Where are you now? What's it like to live where you live? What are the gifts given to you within that which shape you and form you? I have the incredible gift and privilege of being a white, middle-class male brought up in safety, in food safety, in health, and in an environment where I was educated. I have grown up in a city. I have grown up in a city that moves and works quickly and well, where entrepreneurial thought is championed. Those things have all shaped me. And I need to be aware of those. And when I am aware of those, it makes me think, okay, what do I do with that? Have they formed me in good ways? And am I in turn forming other things around me in the power that I have in my hand, with the privilege that I've been handed, in a way that is of benefit to the world around me? Have a think, have a chat. Where did you grow up? Who's around you? What was the countryside like? Were you in the countryside? Could you see the stars? Have you known lack or insecurity, or have you known ill health or prosperity as a result of your geography? Is it possible for you to pick out a single piece of nature like the grass or like the lilies or like a deer? Is it possible for you to pick one out and say, that's what speaks to me? Or do you need to carve out the ability to take a weekend off every year and go and see a mountain because you've never seen one, but when you see one, it does something to your inside, which connects you with a maker in a way that you just can't get to where you are? Have a think through your geography. Where did you grow up? How has that formed you? And how are you forming everybody around you in the light of that? As you do that, may you know the blessing and protection and the joy of God.